Good morning. We're so glad to see all of you here today. We love doing these conferences. We love bringing people together from across the state. And sorry we're getting a late start, but I think it's worth the wait. We're going to have some great things happening over the next 2 days, and I hope that you take away some wonderful new strategies and learn some things to bring back to the communities that you've traveled here from. So I hope everybody had a safe trip here, and we'll have a safe trip home. This is the second annual Families and Learning Conference that we've offered in Missoula with the Montana PERC, which is the Parent Information and Resource Center. The PERC provides technical assistance and trainings in a statewide capacity around early learning and school family community involvement. Last year, our conference really focused on early learning, and we brought Drs. Brazelton and Sparrow to Missoula to share some of the touch points, philosophy, and strategy. And this year, we're bringing speakers to really talk about school family community involvement. It's really important. We live in chaotic times. We have a war overseas. We feel like we're fighting a war on the home front, especially maybe in Montana where there's a lot of poverty. And here in Missoula, the economy is part of everybody's conversation each day. There's jobs being lost. There's houses being foreclosed. People are asking, are we in a recession? How high is unemployment going to be? How are we going to get school shoes for the kids? How are we going to get school supplies, medical? All of those questions come up, and I think it's important that we are supportive of each other in so many ways. And so that's really what our focus is. That's why we've brought Howard Rainier to talk. That's why we're bringing Meg Wheatley and Bliss Brown, who are speakers tomorrow. So I think it's going to be inspiring. They're all full of ideas. They're all full of hope and inspiration. So I think that will be wonderful. Families fight to pay the rent. The war that I talked about, they fight to pay the rent, they fight to put food on the table, they fight for fair housing, for access to jobs, to education, and to be heard. And I think one of the things we can do is learn to listen and learn to hear what our families are saying that they need, and to respond to that. And I think that's the most important thing that we can probably do. All parents want what's best for their children. Probably many of you in this room are parents, and I think that we want our children to have more stable lives, more productive lives, meaningful lives, even than what we've had. So I think that's, regardless of what our experiences may have been as children with education or our circumstances growing up, we're looking for more for our kids. 25% of Montana families live in poverty. That's pretty high, and in many communities it's much higher than that. So educators, policymakers, families increasingly agree that no one can do it alone, that everybody needs support, and children need multiple opportunities to learn outside of school. They need opportunities in the community. They need mentors. They need other people to be involved in their lives. Parent involvement is recognized as a key to student academic achievement. And we say parent involvement, but what we really mean now is school family community involvement. So across the state, the PERC's been doing work to help that happen. And we've been working in Libby and in Poplar and in Hardin and in Great Falls and in Trout Creek and Troy and many different communities across the state, and we're expanding. We've hired another parent and community support specialist to go out to the schools and actually do some technical assistance and training, and we're doing some great work across the state to support all the great work that all of you are doing. And this work has to happen in the health field, it has to happen in the early childhood field, it has to happen in K-12 schools, it needs to happen Boys and Girls Clubs, all kinds of community places. So it is important. I think I heard, I was just in Washington, D.C. at the National PERC Conference, and I heard that it costs we spend $5,000 a year to educate each child. And they put the value on having parent engagement, one parent engaged at $1,000 per child. I mean, that's like big bucks for your for your volunteer. That's value added. So But parents are busy, especially in Montana. Parents are working 2 jobs. They're struggling just to make ends meet. So you need to go beyond parents, and you need to look at retirees and business people and folks that work at the hospital that might want to volunteer tutor, or that might want to come in and offer their skills, that might want to help with the science fair, that might want to come for the community carnival or things like that. So we need the help of community members and business partners. And to that end, we have actually partnered this year with the Bureau of Business and Economic Research at the university to hold a business summit. And we're Washington Foundation, as well as WORD and the Montana PERC have invited about 30 business folks into a breakfast summit tomorrow, which will be happening concurrently, to talk about the value of early childhood education, investing early, investing often, that you're growing your upcoming workforce, that you're supporting your current parents and their children so that they can actually help their children be successful. They need time to go to conferences. They need time to go on a field trip. They need resources. They may not know when their hours are cut where they can access food at the food bank and things like that. So those are all the kinds of things. And we've not invited that community into our work before. Like I said, we work with health professionals, and we work with social services, and we work with educators and early childhood, but we have kind of not invited the business community, and I think it's a key piece. So the focus of this conference is on community building. It's about strengthening communities in challenging times. That's our subtitle this year, and I thought that was great because these are challenging times. One of the keynote speakers that you'll hear tomorrow, Meg Wheatley, has said, "Whatever the problem, community is the answer." And I just really like that. Whatever the problem, community is the answer. And I just think that's powerful, and there's power in numbers, and there's power in support. So last year at this conference, I said, we have families living desperate lives whose children suffer from having less or less. And we need to be paying attention to their social and emotional development as well as their educational development. We need to widen our definition of family. We talked about that last year. Family is not just mom and dad, but it's step-parents, it's grandparents, it's kinship care. We have speakers today and tomorrow that will talk about kinship care. We have speakers to talk about families who have incarcerated family members, we'll be talking about brain injury and ADD and ADHD, and about suicide prevention and all kinds of things to help support the families that we're working with. And so I think you have a lot of choices on some very meaningful work to listen to. So let's open the minds of our coworkers and our business community and our colleagues. Let's have conversations. We need them. We need to really listen. We need to assist parents in finding their voice through offering parent leadership development, giving them skills to be able to advocate for their kids. We know that strengthening families is important to academic success and supporting families. And I'm anxious to hear the conversations that happen in all the rooms during the next couple of days. So I just want to thank all of you for coming on behalf of WORD and the Montana PERC, and I really want to thank the WORD staff, not just the PERC staff, but the whole WORD staff for putting on the conference. And I especially want to thank Jennifer Calder and Thea De La Mater, who do all the minutia, all the minute-to-minute planning. They're unbelievable in their efforts to get this off the ground. We're thrilled to have every one of you here participating, and I hope, like I said, that you get some real strategies from what's coming up ahead of you. So I'd like to introduce Denise Juneau. I'm proud and honored to be able to introduce Superintendent Juneau today. Denise has been a member of our state advisory board for the Montana PERC for 2 years, where she's advocated not just for family involvement, but for listening to the students. That's another voice we forget to listen to, and she's brought that to our attention, and it's good advice. I've also heard several of her stump speeches or campaign speeches, and I'm always just amazed by your depth of knowledge about Montana, from basketball to economics, and I don't know why I'm surprised, because Denise is homegrown. She's here, she grew up in Montana. She graduated from Browning High School. She went to MSU, unfortunately. Got her undergrad there in English. She went to Harvard, got her master's from the Harvard graduate education school. She taught for a number of years in both North Dakota and Montana up in Browning. Came back to Montana and then got it right, went to UM to the law school, got her law degree, clerked for the Supreme Court, and then went to work sometime after that for the Office of Public Instruction and working with Indian Education for All. And so she comes to the position of superintendent of schools with a lot of really great background, policy, all kinds of things that she's going to bring to this. So she believes in fairness and respect, and she's got a lot of integrity. I think that this is what got her elected to the position. So I believe that she's the first American Indian serving in a statewide executive position. That's quite an honor. So please join me in welcoming the Honorable Denise Juneau, our new superintendent. Get these.
Well, geez, Christy made me sound really good. I said I always tell people I look really good on paper, but thank you for inviting me to participate for a few brief moments. I was glad to hear that there's going to be some business connections. Too often we don't reach out enough to businesses, I believe, and actually the Commissioner of Higher Education, Sheila Stearns, and I are going to be meeting with Rotary clubs and Lions clubs and Elks clubs.
I'm just going to move this one here, I guess.
And I'd like to welcome
That should be better.
because we believe that business needs to become friends of education as well. When I was running for a public office, still ringing, I talked a lot about how we need to create a positive public perception of education in our state, and we still have a long ways to go on that. And I think by bringing business partners in, talking about career readiness, how we can get students ready for the workforce and the skills they need, and then to help develop school systems that meet those needs, I think we can go a long ways. And so I hope your discussions with the business partners are really good tomorrow morning. You also looked at your agenda of outstanding speakers. You're so fortunate to be able to hear Bliss Brown, who was here last year. Got to introduce her. She's a fascinating lady. Meg Wheatley, as you said, who's also having a community forum tonight. I don't know her, but I've heard really great things about her. Of course, Howard Rainier's famous guy, and he's famous for being able to empower youth and a motivational speaker and all those issues that come with that. And so he travels around the country and internationally, I'm sure, talking with kids, talking with adults about working with kids. So I'd be expecting a fun speech and fun workshops from Howard. I want to thank you, all of you as well, sitting in this room, for taking time in the final days of summer before school starts to learn from each other and to share your passion for building strong families and strong communities. You guys really start early, 8 in the morning, for community organizing people. And the cups of coffee are really tiny, so I've only had a couple. But I want you to take a look around you today and see people sitting at your table. Look at the people sitting next to you at the next table. And I'm sure many of you see a lot of familiar faces that you run in the same circles. People have worked for decades to improve kids' lives through school and community efforts. But if you can also take a look around and appreciate all of the current leaders and educators who are involved in this work. And now notice the new faces who are present at the conference and at your table. And notice how they have caught the bug of this work, and knowing that communities and making those connections with communities and parents really will make a difference. And you can take a look around this room and see the future leaders in this work. And so I really applaud all of you for taking time out and being here and working with each other to make our communities better. As your Superintendent of Public Instruction, I feel privileged to serve as our education system's top advocate. joining you in the fight for better schools, better communities, and better opportunities for all of our kids. The Office of Public Instruction is an agency that works to ensure every student receives a quality public education, no matter their background, their heritage, their economic status, or their geographic location. We advocate at the legislature for school funding and then distribute their appropriation, over $1 billion, to schools. We also advocate for Montana with the U.S. Department of Education, arguing on behalf of our state for more resources to fit the needs of our rural state. You know, when the U.S. Department of Education thinks of rural status, they're thinking Billings and they're thinking Missoula as rural. And we have to promote the idea that rural means different to us, and that we actually are promoting this idea that we be designated more as a frontier state, that the very tiny communities are more of a frontier because the rural definition they have in their head is so very, very different from what we have. And that's a hard idea to get across. We argue for more resources. We argue for more resources for our districts that are struggling the most in this state. But we know at the Office of Public Instruction that we cannot succeed in isolation. We know that we need to come together with people and organizations that care just as much as we do about kids' futures. And that's where all of you come in. You have the passion, you have the wisdom, and you have the on-the-ground experience that is needed to make a difference in kids' and families' lives. The work you are doing every day is exactly what is needed right now. What has always been needed, but what in this changing world is needed now more than ever. During my campaign for superintendent, I made one promise as I traveled the state, and it's a huge, huge state, that when elected, I would wake up every day and ask whether we are doing everything in our power to ensure our students are receiving a quality education. And what I know now, and what I see every day, is that we have a lot to be proud of in our Montana schools. Our kids score higher in math and science than other kids across the nation. We have model partnerships between our schools and our colleges and universities. Our students are exhibiting less of the risky behaviors, such as smoking, than they were a decade ago. These are all tangible examples of how we succeed in the eyes of our students, how we do not let our students down. But each morning when I wake up and ask myself that question, if we're doing everything we possibly can, I can honestly tell myself that no, we are not. We're not doing everything we can if kids are not getting the schooling they need to be college ready by their senior year. And we have a lot of places where students are not being college ready, where students dream of going to college and do not have the skills to be able to do that. We're not doing everything we can if students are dropping out of schools. We still have a pretty high dropout rate, higher in some areas than others, and we have a long way to go in that area. If students do not graduate from high school at a minimum, they are damned to a life of low chances of success in life. And so we really need to do a lot to make sure they're at least graduating from high school. We're not doing everything we can if kids are distracted by cyberbullying and other interpersonal dynamics while they're at school. And these are not easy challenges to overcome. Each of you have worked in your own way to mitigate these and other challenges, either in the organizational network you work in or with an individual child or family. And while we all may wish we could work harder, or better yet, we may wish we could clone ourselves, what we really need to be doing is working smarter. Working smarter means understanding and then building and then practicing the strategies that we know would work, the strategies that truly can make a difference in a child's life. I recently learned more about the power of what works when I attended a conference out of Livingston, Montana, where kids and adults came together for a few days to talk about teenagers dropping out of school, a dropout forum. Working together, they had put up on easels all across the room, the adults in one area and the students in the other area, about what school meant to them and how we can better improve our system and how we can prevent dropouts in our state. And the adults listed things such as more money, more effective teachers, more community groups coming in, connections with parents, family involvement. And so they had this laundry list of issues: better curriculum, more relevant curriculum, And on the other side, where the students were, you know what they had? Their entire list was made up of almost relationships. That was it. About how they just wanted people to care about them and to come in and tell them that they could do it and make these connections. That was their entire list. I was also, Secretary Duncan from the United States Department of Education was recently in our state, and he went to Billings and went to a 100-year anniversary of a school, but he also went to the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, Lame Deer. And I was able to travel with him down there and talk a little bit with him about our frontier state and about the issues that we face and about how the issues that he would really hear coming from our state, issues of student achievement, dropout rates, all the challenges that public schools all across this nation face. He would hear those same issues, but he needed to take a look around him and notice that our context was so very, very different. So we went to Lame Deer, and he had what he called a talking circle. He brought in parents, he brought in teachers, he brought in students. Everybody sat in a circle, and he just had a discussion with them about the education system. And once again, you know what students wanted? One student brought up about just, he wanted people to show up and tell him that they believed in him and that they would challenge him to complete high school. And so when Arnie Duncan asked him, what would it take for you and your peers to stay in school and graduate 4 years from now? Those were his answers. I want people to show up every day and tell me that I can do it. It's that simple. Relationships. That's what kids are craving. We need to ask students more often. I was just at a conference the other day where they had students on a panel. I think that's great, telling adults what they need from school and what they want. I talked to the Girls State Conference this spring. Hundreds of girls from all across the state from our K-12 system coming together to do mock legislature, get elected. They even had election for a state superintendent. And so I got to tour her around the office, which made me kind of worried because everybody was so happy to see her. I said, maybe my job's in danger. But they are very engaged and they know exactly what they want from their education. They asked about cell phone use in classes and why teachers aren't using technology to reach them. They talked about comprehensive sex education and why their friends and peers were becoming pregnant without any knowledge of how all the birds and the bees worked and how adults weren't reaching out to them. They had so many questions. I did my little 10-minute spiel to them, and I was there for 45 minutes longer answering questions from students who were very engaged, and I had to leave, and they were still raising hands. And so we need to engage students more and ask them what they need because they're very savvy, and they know exactly what they want. They want someone to care about them and to care about their future. I think that makes sense because that's really what we all crave. We all want caring, loving relationships with families, with friends, and in our communities. And it turns out, as many of you know this already, that building productive relationships is key to helping kids meet and overcome the challenges in their lives. Research consistently shows the most effective strategies are ones that engage what I call the 4 pillars of family, school, community, and self. And here's where all of you come in. You are already practitioners of finding the points of common interest and shared values that connect our families and communities to our schools. Many of you have the privilege of working with students every day, watching them grow while they're in your care. And many of you work in schools and in other institutions that seek to better connect families and communities into the lives and well-being of our children. And so as you spend time together these next couple days, sharing stories, sharing strategies, and learning from each other, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge each of you to keep an eye and an ear out for ways you can take what you know and what you learn and apply it to even more situations in your communities. If you learn today about a mentoring program for teenage fathers, I want you to think about how the strategies they use to recruit and care for these young dads can apply to the work you may be doing to bring more fresh foods into the lunchroom. If you hear about the efforts schools are making to be a locus of adult learning and growing, as well as a safe learning environment for students, I want you to think about how your institution can build relationships with the schools that meets everyone's shared vision of what our communities can be. As your superintendent of public instruction, I count on your expertise and your commitment to help support our public schools. I look forward to working with each of you to help strengthen our communities and our schools so that every child raised in Montana will have the best opportunities to learn and grow. All of us know the power of public education, what it can do for individuals, for communities, and for our state. It's a very powerful tool to help our state grow. I know what education's done for me. You know, it brought me through Browning. I started out my education career at a Head Start on the south side of Billings. My parents were at Eastern Montana College becoming educated to become teachers. Moved to Browning where they did become teachers. I graduated from Browning High School, went on, and now I stand in front of you as your state superintendent. That's the power of education. But it takes belief from adults to be able to do that and to raise kids in a system where they will become successful. I do this work, and I know that you do this work as well, so that one morning when we do wake up and ask ourselves, are we doing everything in our power to ensure a quality education is being offered to every student? We can say, yes, we have. Our job is done. And I wish you the best learning over the next couple of days. I applaud the organizers for getting everything together. Christy did a good job of letting everybody know how hard these are to pull together. So very grateful for everybody being here again. I would really like to stay and learn with you over the next couple days, but I actually get to meet with President Obama tomorrow in Belgrade. So I know you understand that, although I'd much rather be here. That duty calls. But when I get a small, short audience with him, and what I do plan to, the message that I want to leave with him is in Montana, again, our rural status, and second, that he should not forget his rural or his community organization roots, and how we can ask for a lot more money in education, but it really takes community partnerships to make sure kids learn. And we need to make those connections, and that if there's any money given to education, in the big scheme of things, of course, we could like programs in schools, but there also needs to be money and resources to make those connections with parents, with families, with communities, and making sure an entire community is looking out for students. It's time to move beyond the schoolhouse and reach out to businesses, reach out to community organizations, and make sure that they are players, because they do important work after school. They do important work before school. They do important work during the summer. And so it takes all of us, you know, that old saying, it takes all of us the village to raise the child. And it is important. We're going to do some community meetings this fall in some communities and show them their data and talk about community involvement and how everybody needs to be involved and how it's time to get past the idea of being scared of being cussed out by parents. And if you see kids walking down the street, stopping and asking them why they're not in school. If you see kids hanging out somewhere, stopping and asking them what they need to get back into school. Those ideas of, it takes all of us. And so we'll be doing a lot of that this fall. We'll be reaching out. And so I'm just glad that you all are here and taking some time to learn from each other, and look forward to our continued partnership. Thanks. I think we have a few minutes if you have any questions. Do we?
Can you bring them on?
I don't think so. I don't think he listens to my advice that much.
We invited Michelle.
Yeah.
And now here they are.
Yeah, actually, let me talk a little bit about what we've been doing since I've been in office. We've been meeting on strategic directions. And so we have a few of those now. And really what it is we're creating a comprehensive P20 plan. So we're working with preschools. We're working a lot with DPHHS and their Best Beginnings programs and making connections there so that we can make those transitions for parents and for students easier into kindergarten and then into first. We're also working a lot with the Commissioner of Higher Education and the Montana University system, so students will be able to make this seamless transition. And so really that's about academic achievement for all, making sure people have rigorous coursework, all those issues that come together around schools through a P20 plan. And so that's one. Second is communication, both communication within our agency and communication out to the field, which is a lot of these discussions with businesses, why we go around the state like we do, promoting the idea of public education, trying to get people on board, because really what it's about is engagement. Engagement from communities, making sure people are involved, and making sure we get the right legislators in the right seats so that we can be supported with public education. Data, using data, sort of the ribbon that runs through everything of making policy decisions, seeing where our gaps are and moving there. And so now when we look at our data, what it comes around to is this idea of what the U.S. Department of Education is now calling turnaround schools. Those schools who have not made AYP for 7 years now. Those schools where the dropout rates are very high. Those schools that are located in communities with very high poverty and concentrated poverty and generational poverty. And so that's where we'll be starting our efforts of community outreach, because they really do need to be connected. And we all know where those are. Those are on our reservations in Montana. Concentrated poverty, generational poverty, isolated, deep, huge unemployment rates for generations. And so the challenges there are great. And that's really where we'll be starting our discussions. We'll be moving into communities, showing them their data, talking about connections that we can make. How can we bring the community together around education, around academic achievement, and help support schools, and most of all, help support students in their efforts. Huge challenge, and we all realize that, but unless we start that discussion with the communities, we'll still get the results that we've been getting, and those are unacceptable.
Employment opportunities for Indian teachers do not come along very often, and I'm wondering what it is that can help.
A lot of it goes back, I believe, to when I was at one of the dropout things, and we're having discussions with students. Almost every one of them, and they were all Indian students, talking about how they dream these dreams of going to college. They got to create these little art things, and one of their corners was about their dreams, and almost every one of them was about college. And yet when we go in and we see the data from schools, we know that they're not going to be academically successful. And so it starts way back then. They get into college, and you watch the data, and Indian students don't attend colleges at great rates either, and then their graduation rates from there are even less. And so an Indian student graduating from college is very fortunate to make it through that system. And then what they get recruited into, the types of fields they get recruited into, are very different from teaching. It's science, it's math, it's engineering. And so we need to recruit more Indian teachers into our profession. In our state, 98% of our teaching force is white, and 2% are Indian. And so there are huge issues that we need to overcome. We need to start thinking of grow your own programs in those communities through online learning. And that goes for all of rural Montana. Rural Montana is having such a difficult time recruiting and retaining teachers in their areas. I just talked with the superintendent from some small school out in eastern Montana who had this teacher. She cruised through, and she cruised right on through the town and kept going because she was like, I'm not living here. And they're very real. There's nowhere for them to live. I just met with a superintendent who's starting in Ekalaka who could not find a house to live in that area. And so there are a lot of issues that we really need to start pushing and making sure that we're recruiting and retaining in general. And then we need to add diversity to that discussion as well, because our teaching force is not there yet. So it's a big encompassing challenge, and we need to attack it from a lot of different ways. All right, you guys are easy. Thanks.